Y'all planning for this?
Welcome back, TPR Nation. This is Jamie Shalansky in an episode of Worlds to Conquer. Have you ever met somebody and about 30 seconds into the conversation think to yourself, man, I blew that. I wish I could rewind. I wish I could undo that. I wish I could go back and say something just a little bit different. How many of us have had conversations with people and we wish that we could just pause and go back and say something differently? We replay the conversation over and over in our minds and we're like, man, why didn't I say this? Why wasn't I, prepared for that? And the truth is, it's because we don't practice it. We don't practice how we're going to introduce ourselves to someone. We don't practice telling somebody what we do for a living. We don't practice our unique selling proposition. So that way, every single time that we meet somebody, we are prepared. And the top financial advisors I know, those that are just rocking the industry, they know that they have got to practice because perfect practice makes perfect. And they are prepared every single time that they are asked, tell me, what do you do for a living? How many times have you personally been asked that question? What is it that you do for a living? Or just, what do you do? And do you know how to respond? Do you know how to answer that really basic question? Because so oftentimes I hear from people, they say, yeah, I'm a financial advisor, or I work at a financial advisor's office. And that doesn't tell anyone anything really, because we have done such a lousy job in the financial planning industry of distinguishing what a financial advisor is. And I know this for a fact because you can walk into a bank and approach a teller who has like a level 2 training and their business cards will say financial advisor on them. And so we have no distinguishing factor about what separates us from insurance agents, what separates us from bankers or lenders or brokers. We've just done a really bad job of doing that. And in our quest of trying to rectify that, we've made up a dozen different designations that mean very little to the public. They still don't understand what we do. Now, I'm all about going and getting your designations if that gives you some sort of superior level of education and confidence and getting those acronyms. In fact, it's one of the things that I told my son right out of the gate. He graduated with his bachelor's degree at the age of 21. Because we were really intentional about his education when he got to high school. And we got a lot of his GERs out of the way during high school periods. And then that made going to college that much easier because he only needed 2 years to get his bachelor's degree. So when he graduated at the age of 21, he's full of gusto and ambition and is like, okay, now what do I need to focus on? And I told him, go get acronyms. Go get acronyms after your name. Because if you're not going to get your master's, you're not going to get your doctorate, you've got to have something to tell other people that you have an area of expertise. Now, why would I say this to a 21-year-old that might be different than a 35-year-old? Because if I'm sitting across from a 21-year-old in a meeting, there's no way in God's green earth I'm handing over millions of dollars to this kid. But a 35 or a 40-year-old, I know that they've had a little bit more experience. I'm looking at their CV, I'm looking at their, resume, and I'm seeing that they have a lot more industry experience than a kid does. So at a young age, if I'm right out of the gate, if I'm younger than kind of age 30, go get your acronyms, go get your credentialing after your name. So then that way that gives a consumer some type of justification that you have an advanced area of education. Now, you don't need a dozen different acronyms. If you want a dozen different acronyms, go get them. But the alphabet soup isn't going to make you more successful. What does make you successful is understanding your target audience and knowing how you can solve their problems. That is what drives prospects and referrals towards your business. So let's break it down. Who is your target audience? And don't say everyone, because it's everyone, it's no one. We can't use that that all the time to say I help anyone that has to deal with money. Instead, even if you're not niche focused, and you should be, because you probably already are, you just don't know it, and you've never been deliberate, intentional, or disciplined about it. But who do you serve? Who is your target audience? Now, most financial advisors, this is where they're going to rattle off to me. What are they going to say? Yep. I'm 5 years away from retirement. I have a few $1 million in assets. I love to give referrals and I listen to all of your advice. Great. Fantastic. If that's your target audience, then go work that target audience. But maybe it's not. Maybe your niche is a little bit more specific. Maybe it's academic professors. Maybe it's medical professionals. It's engineers. It's teachers. It's state. It's government. Whatever it is, find out who is the majority of the clients that you have. And even if you think you're not niche focused, you probably are. You need to go back and listen to the episode called Niche Slapped and make sure that you're diving into your niche and seeing, do I really have a basis of a target audience that I could be helping? So if you were to meet Micah randomly, Micah Shalansky, my baby brother, and you say, hey, what do you do for a living? He would tell you, I'm a financial advisor who helps federal employees learn about their benefits. All right. That is very specific. Now people understand a little bit more about what they do and who he serves. If you were to meet me in an elevator and you say, what do you do? I would give you one of two answers. I would say, one, I'm trying to be a mogul, but without going broke. If I was just being cheeky and wanted to joke with you. Or I might say, I bully small business owners into not overpaying in taxes and dying broke. And then that really resonates with the people that I want to speak with. Because if you are a small business owner, then you know that your greatest expense is taxes. It is taxes, taxes, taxes every day of the week. And it makes them so disgusted when you have paper profits and you're overpaying in taxes. Now, I am nowhere near a tax professional. I don't geek out like my baby brother does about reading tax code. It just doesn't get me going. However, I partner with companies like Retirement Tax Services and Stephen Jarvis and other CPAs in my community and abroad, and being able to work with the business entity, understand the mission, understand where we're going in the next 5 to 10 years, and then how do we develop a tax plan that incorporates a lot of that. Oftentimes, CPAs are historians. They look back and their scorecard is being measured on whether or not they helped you save money during this tax year. But I don't want to look at this tax year. I want to look at the next 5 to 10 years. Why? Because that's where my goals are. And if I'm working with you and we're developing your small business, I want you to be earning more money in the next 5 to 10 years. So I don't want to be short-sighted. And so a lot of times this is me working with CPAs and looking at bonus depreciation schedules and saying, okay, how do we mix this up? Because a bonus, 120% bonus depreciation sounds really great if we're doing a massive construction project in year one. But what happens when my income 10x's in the next 5 years? Where am I going to be then? So we work with these different professionals. But if I was meeting you and you heard me say this, and you say, I bully people into taking my advice so they don't overpay in taxes and die broke. If you are a business owner, you get it. You get it because you are sick and tired of overpaying in taxes. And also, most of your money goes back into that company. I mean, that is the great sadness in America, is that we live in such an abundance of opportunity and we have so few barriers to entry in this country that we take a passion, we take something that we really, really love, and then we figure out how to make money off of it. We exploit it until we forget entirely why we were passionate about it in the first place. This is one thing when I talk to young adults, I love to change their concept. I'm like, listen, everyone tells you that they want you to be happy. And so go find a job that makes you happy. Happiness doesn't come from a job. It doesn't come from buying stuff. It comes from within. It comes from gratitude and humility and courage and strength and a belief in a divine power and all of these things that are not wrapped up into the identity of your job or the possessions that you own. Now, as a byproduct, if you get to be happy because you like what you're doing for work, fantastic. Should you hate it? No, absolutely not. And you shouldn't hate your work because then you can't deliver massive value. You can't serve other humans if you hate your work or you're miserable at what you're doing. So there has to be a blend of those two responsibilities. But what a tragedy that we take something that we just love and we figure out how to make money off of it until we no longer love it anymore. I mean, that is why most people in the small business space get so burnt out. Look at small restaurant owners. That is the one. I have one restaurant client and I will never, ever have another restaurant client again. And they're a great client. They're fantastic. I love working with them. But if you've worked in the restaurant industry, if you've helped clients in the restaurant industry, it is a thankless occupation. It is constantly losing money and you're having to hustle from quarter to quarter, hire effectively and maintain a standard of quality that brings customers routinely into your place of business. It's just a really tough industry to work in. And it's certainly a tough industry to help someone plan on profitability in. At least it is for me. So I don't like that particular space. I like services instead. Services I can market all day long. Now, what else did I do in my quote unquote elevator pitch, if you will? I also told you right off the bat, I'm a bully. I'm going to bully you. I'm aggressive. I'm dominant. I am, going to give you unsolicited advice as my heuristic every single day of the week. I don't know if I know you, if I have a relationship with you, I'm always looking and saying, how can we grow? How can we be better? How can we, ask curious questions of one another and figure out a strategy that improves the life that you're living? And so right off the bat, I tell you, I'm going to bully you. And if you don't like that response, guess what? You're self-filtering right out of my target audience. Do not underestimate the importance of creating conversational points that help the person in front of you self-filter. Now, that's a complex sentence, so I want to kind of break it down. When I talk to somebody and I'm giving them my different points of who I serve and why I serve that particular audience, they are quickly running through their own situation and they're thinking about themselves and saying, does this apply to me? So many times when we meet people and we're hearing new ideas and we're hearing different theories and we're listening to their points of view, that very first thing that we're going to think about is, does this apply to me? Can this help me? Is this for me? And if it's not, then we start thinking about, okay, who does this apply to? And so oftentimes when I talk to people and I say, hey, this is who I serve, we go through that. And then they'll say, oh, you know what? I've got a friend that just started a business. They should really come and talk to you about this. And so if it's not for them, they've filtered it and would like to make an introduction to somebody it might apply to. So there is a lot of significance in making sure that this propositional phrase is something that somebody can quickly filter, see if it's appropriate for them. If it's not appropriate for them, who would it be appropriate for? Once you've identified your target audience and you know who you are in service of, and you're able to articulate that to other people, now it becomes this unique proposition. And so what do you do that is different than other people? And now this is a really difficult exercise for most people, myself included, to go through. But the best way that I've ever helped anyone go through this exercise is by getting out a sheet of paper, folding it in half, and on the left-hand side, writing down one of many, and then on the right-hand side, writing down one of a kind. And so you go through the list of what you do that makes you one of many. So if I write down the word financial advisor, that's going on the one of many columns because there are many financial advisors out there in this space. But what do we do that's one of a kind? When I think about our subsidiary, Plan Your Federal Retirement, we are one of a kind in the sense that we help federal employees understand their benefits. Are there other companies that have this niche and they're also servicing federal employees? Of course there are. We're not the only one exclusively operating in this market. We're just the best. And so we identify the ways that we are one of many and the ways that we are one of a kind. So this is a great exercise for you to sit down. I do this independently as a financial advisor because this is really one of those areas that I don't necessarily bring my team in on until I flushed out a lot of this idea. idea, because this is that visionary space. And so while I value my team's feedback, this is a very hard exercise for them to complete. So make sure if you're going to present this to your team, make sure that it's something that they live and operate in this visionary space, because if not, you might give them a really difficult task. You might have handed them a sheet of paper and said, write your own biography. And nobody is able to do that. In fact, update your website and have your team members' pictures and ask them for a brief biography to put on the page. And it becomes this laborious task for them. It becomes very difficult to write about ourselves and what we do. And so instead, we just bullet point down. And so we'll work with the visionaries and we'll write through, and then I might run it through the team and say, hey, listen, this is what I have down. Does anyone else have anything to offer to that? So if I give them a place to start with, they're normally pretty good at giving suggestions, but I don't hand them the blank sheet of paper and ask them to do a task that I already know is difficult for me as a visionary and is going to be impossible for them as a team member to do. And this exercise of one of a kind and one of many is really trying to target what is your unique selling proposition. What do you do differently than other people who live and operate in this space? And once you have all of those thoughts and ideas down, which can be very, very difficult to have to do, one of the things I like to do when I'm going through this exercise is a giant 3M, right? They materialize out of nowhere. I'll throw a 3M up on the board. I'll write down one of a kind, one of many. I'll throw down my initial ideas, and then I'll leave that space. I'll go walk or go do something else. And then all of a sudden the ideas start to pop up and I'm like, oh yeah, that makes me different. And so I'm giving my hippocampus an opportunity to engage in a different activity, because the brain is still going to be problem solving, right? So if we read a complex theory, a complex idea, if we're doing complex math and we get stumped and we walk away from it, our brain, even though we've moved on to another task, is still processing that information. It's still working subconsciously on that problem. That's why oftentimes as soon as we walk away and clear our heads and change our environment, we come up with solutions, we come up with answers, we come up with inspiration. So if I get stumped in this, I will literally just pick up my stuff, I'll go out in nature. I like to hijack the hippocampus, so I like to go out in nature and make sure my eyes are moving forward, because then that primal part of me is also making sure, like assessing, is there danger? What's going on? There's all these different aspects of being outside instead of inside that my brain has to operate on. And so it gets in hyperdrive and I start problem solving that way. Now, power tip, if you have a genius idea while you're out walking, make sure you grab your phone and write it down immediately. Just because you were able to problem solve it on that walk does not necessarily mean you'll remember it 10 minutes later. So I like to write that down immediately. I'll often grab my phone and just jot down fragments or phrases that I can come back to later and unpack. So now you've got this unique selling proposition outlined. And so now you could call it a catchphrase, but now you need to take all of these words and you need to figure out how to put this into something that's conversational, because you want to engage curiosity. So you want to create some type of curious thing that makes people ask you additional questions. And when you flush out whatever this concise messaging is that you're going to tell people that you do, you have to ask yourself, does this invoke questions? Does this make you have to answer me a follow-up question? So if you're so concise that you come in here and you say, I look at 1040s and I run a 37-point checklist to make sure you haven't missed anything on your tax return. Okay. I don't have anywhere to go with that. Maybe a skilled listener would say, oh, do people often miss 37 things on their tax return? You don't know what else to say. You don't know where to go. So you have to create a little bit of curiosity that allows another person to ask you more questions so you can have a more meaningful conversation about what things are. Now, as a financial advisor listening to this podcast, if you have not done this exercise with your team, if you have not helped your team members explain to other people what they do, this is an important concept to go through with them, because it becomes very awkward for team members to tell others that they work at a financial advisory office, because oftentimes what will end up happening is that person that they're speaking with will start asking that support personnel for stock tips. Go go talk to your team members and ask them, what do you say to others when they ask what you do for a living? And you'll see sort of like this shuffling around, and they don't like to talk about it. They don't like to mention it. They don't like to have to say what they do, because then it invokes all these other questions that they're either unlicensed, unqualified, or don't want to answer from other people when it comes to money. So I like to work with my team members on this one, especially when they onboard, so that I'm giving them the tool set that when they are chatting with people, they can clearly communicate what it is that they do and also the boundaries of what they do. Because you would be shocked to find out how many people just randomly ask for stock tips, thoughts on cryptocurrency, the economy, the value of the dollar, NFTs, all of these range of investments that team members just aren't comfortable talking about with people they don't know. So empower your team to make sure that they understand how to answer that question. What do you do for a living? Or where do you work? And go ask that and see what their answers are or what they tell other people. Because we as a society ask that question right off the bat when we meet somebody. You know, we might have 2 or 3 different pleasantries, but we dive pretty quickly into what do you do, so we can assess whether or not that information applies to us. We can satisfy our curiosity and see if there's any benefit for us or anyone that we know about those individual services. We do it all of the time. Every day in our life, when we go out and meet somebody, we're constantly filtering, how does their profession benefit us? And if it doesn't benefit us, who else could it benefit? So now we've got those building blocks in place. Now you've really focused on who your target audience is. You defined your unique selling proposition. You've crafted a very clear, very concise message about what it is that you do that engages curiosity, and you focused on the benefits, not features. So benefits versus features is a clarification that you will need to make. And it can be really difficult sometimes, especially in marketing, especially when we're working on things that are our own. We get caught up in talking about the features of what we do, and we forget about the benefits. And the benefits is what people are most interested in. So for example, could say, I'm a financial advisor. I practice comprehensive financial planning. That means we do estate planning, risk insurance, retirement planning, investment planning, and tax planning. And that would be the end of my sentence and probably the end of my conversation with that individual. Or I could say, I'm a comprehensive financial advisor, and my number one goal is to work with my clients so they don't outlive their retirement savings. Wow, which one had more impact? Now, one of them told you all about the features that I do, right? All the 5 different areas that I'm going to focus on when we come in and we talk about your personal finances. But which one showed the benefit of that work? Another great example, the one I always come back to because it is the king of features versus benefits, is you can buy an iPod and it has, a terabyte worth of information, or you can buy an iPod and have 10,000 songs in your pocket. 10,000 songs in your pocket. That told me exactly what I needed to know about the iPod when they first came out. And I was so elated. I was like, yes, absolutely. That's what I want. I want a jukebox in my pocket. That is what I want right there. It showed me the benefit, not the features of this particular instrument. So when you're creating your concise message, make sure that you are ready to illustrate the benefit of your services and not just the features of working with you. And that should be in every single part of your marketing. That should be in your profile. That should be in your bio. That should be on your website. That should be in your conversation. You should have all of this armed and ready and polished, not slick polished, but comfortable enough and confident enough that you know what it is that you have to offer and your team knows what it is that you have to offer. Now, hopefully, once you've conveyed this message, once you've delivered this value proposition to somebody, polite conversation would mean that it is now their responsibility to ask you a follow-up question. That's how conversation works. We say something powerful. We hope somebody else responds with a question or a powerful statement as well of their own. And then we volley back and forth so we can have a meaningful dialogue. That's the components of the conversation when we break down dialogue and conversational tactics and how they work. But if you come into a conversation with somebody and they ask you what you do, and you give them some sort of really direct factual statement that just offers features, there's no follow-up for them. You've closed the door. They knocked. They said, hey, what do? You open it and said, not today, and shut it right back on their face. Instead, you have to say, come on in. Would you like a cup of tea? Let's have this conversation together. So make sure that you're showing enough dedication, responsibility, and discipline into taking the time to do these exercises so that you do know how to present yourself in a meaningful and impactful way. This is the number one thing that I see financial advisors get wrong when it comes to marketing, is they don't understand what they have to offer, and they don't understand the benefit of why somebody should hire you. Why should somebody hire you? Why should somebody pay significant fees, AUM or fee, whatever you want to call it, and have you be their financial advisor? And it can't be because you're honest and trustworthy, because those are table stakes. Those are table stakes. Everyone in finance, everyone in the world should be honest and trustworthy. I know that's not always the case, but you don't go forward and saying, I'm honest. You know why? Because honest people don't walk around talking about how honest they are. They are just honest. That's how that works. So if your marketing comes forward and says, I'm honest and trustworthy, my God, I would hope so. What's the opposite of that? You're going to be criminal and a liar? You have to really think about your branding and the message that you're setting across. And then also, what is your unique selling proposition? What do you have to offer that other people don't necessarily have? Because each of us was put here with some sort of unique capability, some sort of really great, talented gift that we get to help other people with. You have to know what yours is, and you have to be able to articulate it to your entire team so they get it, they understand it, they can help promote your message. The financial advisor I work for is amazing because she helps people blank. You need to give them that tool set so they can go and have conversations, because they're going to be asked. Everyone's asked. We're asked all the time. We ask other people all the time. They're going to be asked. So make sure you're including them, maybe not in the exercise of how we started this, right? You as the visionary, you as the financial advisor, you as the individual that's leading that organization, you need to do the dirty work. And the dirty work is sitting down and figuring out, what do you have to offer? And by golly, what makes you so gosh darn special? The final step you need to take is telling them what action they should take after that conversation. Because I'm not going to sit there with a prospect or somebody that I'm casually meeting, or acquaintance or center of influence, and have a full-blown prospect meeting. That's not what I'm trying to do. But what I am trying to do is convey to them an understanding of the benefits of working with me, and then how do they contact me thereafter. And no, I do not give them my cell phone number. You should not be handing out your cell phone number. If I'm in a social situation and somebody's asking me what we do, we'll have a great conversation. And I will start off with telling them I'm a bully, right? We'll go, I'm a bully and here's who I help. And then we'll go into some of the benefits of, hey, yeah, actually I help somebody with this and this. I've got a couple of stories queued up that people can relate to. So if they've self-selected and they are in my target audience, they can begin to identify with those stories that I'm sharing with them. And then in their mind, they're thinking, man, I got to go talk to you longer. And I want to wrap that conversation up. I want to leave them curious. I want to leave it tantalizing before we come to some awkward conclusion. And so after we'll engage in this conversation, and it's probably 3 to 7 minutes, honestly, 3 to 7 minutes is about my sweet spot of what I like to dedicate to in this area. And then I want to leave them curious. I want to hang it up like, hey, we're not having a full-blown prospect meeting at this wine tasting, but I want to leave them with an action that they can take and say, hey, if you're ever interested in chatting with me more about this, I know we're not in the right environment to have that done today, and I want to respect your confidentiality. Why don't you call my office? I don't have many availabilities. You might be waiting a couple of months, but I'd love to pick up this conversation again. Make sure you tell my office when you call that such and such. You met me at this wine tasting. You're a friend of Bob and Sue's. Whatever that little high touch is that makes them feel special, that they're going to get on my calendar a little bit sooner. So that call to action, wrap it up. Don't go on and on and on about how you can help them in a social setting. They need to come into your office. They need to go through your process, and you need to really wrap your mind around it. If you give too much away for free, there is no value in it. There's no value in free. And sometimes, especially when we're young and we're hungry, we want to to show our value and we give away the farm. We are just like, boom, razzle dazzle. Let me tell you all the things that I could help you with right now in this 45-minute wine tasting while everyone else is sipping Chardonnays. So wrap it up. Don't do the whole blown prospect meeting. Have a process. Have a way of disengaging in that conversation that respects them, leaves them curious, and leaves them wanting more to come and chat with you one-on-one. Okay, TPR Nation, you know that everything we do here at The Perfect RA is 100% about giving you actionable advice you can take right now to transform your business and empower your team. Today, we went over a lot, so I'm going to rattle off these action items for you to take. So you need to work on your crucial, compelling statement about what it is that you do for a living. So step number 1 is going to be identify your target audience. Who are your ideal prospects? Create a self-selection. Who do you work with? Who do you not work with? You don't work with everyone. That's not true, because if you work with everyone, you work with no one. And then you need to define your unique selling proposition. What sets you apart from others? We went through an exercise where I said one of a kind versus one of many. That's a great ways that I like to get started. And then what is my clear and concise message? How can I convey what I'm saying? And when I'm constructing this clear and concise message, what am I focusing on? I'm focusing on the benefits, not the features. So benefits, not the features. Don't rattle off the 5 areas of financial planning that you focus on. You need to talk about why those matter. And then I want a couple of stories with some go-to Bob and Sue clients in my quiver. So that way, if I'm engaging in meaningful dialogue with another person, I've got 1 or 2 practice and rehearsed stories about how I benefited that client, how working with me guided the client towards making a better decision that benefited where they were at. So make sure that we're having that. It needs to be conversational. So while I'm telling you to practice these and rehearse these, it can't come across polished. It has to come across conversational. Those are the tactics. If you are not really great at conversation, if you find it sort of difficult sometimes to know where the volley lies, there's a great free class. I think it's out of the University of Michigan. But Ann Curzon, Dr. Ann Curzon, so she is a professor in English linguistics. And I love her programs because she is by trade a mathematician. And so she was a mathematician that broke down conversation, and she loves language. So she's got a few books on the greatest courses about how dialogue, how conversation works, and how, and she gives these different examples. Really great, very basic, but a great way to kind of brush up your skills if you find yourself having awkward conversations, or if you find yourself ever looking back and saying, oh, why didn't I say that? Or, oh, I should have said that. Or do you think they think I'm weird or awkward? Or, did I handle that wrong? If you ever have those feelings, go take her greatest courses class. It's fantastic. So conversation has a rhythm, dialogue, the way that we conduct ourselves, the way that we ask questions, the way that we solicit questions from other people. There's an art, there's a mastery, like everything in life that we do to it. So if you are looking for a great class, that's one to take. I love it. I think you can even take some of them for free on YouTube. So there's so much education out there on this. All right, TPR Nation, this has been an episode of Worlds to Conquer. I am Jamie Shalansky. Go find people who share your values and change the world.
Hold on before we go. Something that you need to know. This isn't tax, legal, or investment advice. That isn't our intent. Information designed to change lives. Financial planning can make you thrive. Start today, don't think twice. Be a better husband, father, mother, and wife. The perfect RIA, the perfect RIA.